Have you ever found yourself falling for someone who was deeply wounded, emotionally unavailable, yet something in you just couldn't walk away? Maybe they were guarded, lost, chaotic, but you saw something in them, a soul, a softness, a story behind the pain, and without fully realizing it, you started to pour yourself into their healing until you had nothing left. If you have strong water placements, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, this might not be a coincidence. Water signs feel on a level most people don't even know exists, and because of that, they often attract people who are broken, fragmented, or secretly longing to be saved. In this video, we're going deep, not into textbook astrology, but into the emotional, psychological, and karmic underpinnings of why water signs are so often drawn to the broken and the wounded, and what it takes to finally break that pattern without breaking yourself. I'm going to walk you through the hidden motivations behind this attraction, how it shows up for each water sign, and how to heal the part of you that thinks you're only valuable when you're fixing someone else. Because at the end of the day, your empathy isn't the problem. It's the belief that love means suffering. Chapter 1, the water sign archetype, feeling before thinking. When we talk about water signs in astrology, we're talking about the emotional and intuitive undercurrent of the zodiac. Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces are not concerned with logic first. They lead with feeling. They absorb what's unspoken. They notice shifts in tone, silence between words, and energy in the room long before anything is actually said. Water signs are the emotional barometers of the zodiac. They don't just feel their own emotions, they often feel everyone else's too. From a young age, water dominant people often become emotional sponges. They learn to pick up on subtle cues, anticipate moods, and sometimes even regulate others' emotions just to maintain peace. This creates an early and powerful imprint that emotional attunement equals safety, that if they can sense what's happening under the surface, they can prevent harm or earn love. This is why later in life, they're often drawn to people who are unhealed, unstable, or energetically fragmented. It's not just attraction, it's a pull, a subconscious instinct to step into the role of emotional caretaker, to fix, to soothe, to be the safe harbor. It feels familiar, it feels like home. Each water sign does this in their own way. Cancer does it through nurturing. They feel needed when they're taking care of someone. Scorpio does it through emotional merging. They want to penetrate into the depths and transform pain from the inside out. Pisces does it through empathy. They dissolve boundaries so completely that they begin to feel what the other person feels, often losing themselves in the process. But all three water signs share a core drive to connect on a soul level, to understand the hidden layers, to love someone not in spite of their pain, but because of it. This is their magic and their curse. Because when left unconscious, this same gift turns into a pattern of self abandonment, a cycle of loving people for their potential instead of their reality. Chapter 2, the psychological roots, why they're attracted to the wounded. To truly understand why water signs are drawn to the broken, we have to move beyond the surface and into the emotional and psychological imprints that shape them, usually beginning in childhood. Many water dominant individuals grow up in emotionally complex or unstable environments. Maybe they had a parent who was emotionally volatile, unavailable, or silently suffering. Maybe they were raised in a household where emotions weren't expressed directly, but tension lingered in the air like fog. In those early years, water signs often learn that love is something they have to earn, usually by sensing, soothing, or sacrificing. So they become emotional overfunctioners. They try to be the balm for their parents' wounds, the stability in a storm, or the one who absorbs the family's unspoken pain. Over time, this becomes deeply internalized. I am loved when I am useful, when I am healing someone, when I make myself small so others can feel whole. This psychological wiring doesn't disappear, it evolves. As adults, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces often carry this same emotional template into their relationships. They're unconsciously drawn to people who mirror the wounds they once tried to fix, not because they want pain, but because pain feels familiar. Familiar equals safe. And so they fall into the same role: the emotional anchor, the therapist, the savior. Cancer, in particular, has a deep rooted fear of abandonment. They may stay with someone wounded far too long just to avoid being left. They confuse love with obligation, and they give endlessly even when it's draining. Scorpio, on the other hand, is drawn to people with deep emotional wounds because they see pain as a gateway to intimacy. Their love is transformational, but it can become controlling or obsessive when they feel their emotional investment isn't being reciprocated. Pisces often walks straight into the arms of the most broken person in the room, not because they're naive, but because they genuinely believe they can help. Their compassion is limitless, but so is their tendency to lose themselves in the process. Underneath all of this is a core belief: if I can heal them, they'll finally see me. If I love them deeply enough, they'll choose to stay. If I can save them, then I'll finally be enough. But this belief is a trap, because when your love becomes a rescue mission, you stop being a partner and start being a lifeboat. And the moment they no longer need saving, you might feel invisible, discarded, or unworthy. This is the painful paradox of the water sign psyche. The very depth of love they offer can become the reason they're abandoned. Not because they're unlovable, because they've tied their worth to being someone's emotional savior rather than being loved for simply existing. Chapter 3: The Dark Side of Empathy, Martyrdom, Codependency, and Emotional Burnout. Empathy is a sacred gift, especially for water signs, but when empathy becomes a default mode without healthy boundaries, it can turn into a heavy burden. Dark side that many never see coming. For Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, empathy often means feeling other people's pain as intensely as their own. They instinctively want to ease that pain, to carry it for others, sometimes at the cost of their own emotional health. This leads to martyrdom, a quiet, relentless giving that often goes unrecognized and unrewarded. Martyrdom disguises itself as love, but underneath it's a form of self-abandonment. Water signs can lose sight of their own needs, believing that putting themselves last is the price for being loved or needed. This creates a dangerous imbalance. Their identity becomes wrapped up in emotional labor, and their self-worth becomes dependent on how much they sacrifice. Codependency often follows. It's the psychological trap where boundaries dissolve and emotional survival becomes linked to another person's well-being. Water signs can become so enmeshed in someone else's trauma that their own emotional autonomy erodes. They forget who they are beneath the caregiving role. The lines between me and you blur, and exhaustion takes root. Emotional burnout is the inevitable result. When you give without replenishing, when you absorb pain without processing it, your emotional reserves deplete. This can show up as chronic fatigue, anxiety, depression, or numbness, the body's way of forcing rest when the heart refuses to stop caring. But here's the hard truth: self sacrifice is not sustainable. It is not noble to lose yourself in the process of loving another. Empathy must be balanced with boundaries, or it becomes a slow erosion of the soul. For water signs, healing begins with recognizing this pattern. It means learning to say no without guilt, to protect your energy as fiercely as you protect those you love, to understand that your worth is not measured by how much you can carry for others, but by how fully you show up as yourself, whole, healed, and honored. Chapter 4: The Shift, Healing the Healer. The journey for water signs drawn to the broken often leads to a powerful crossroads. The moment you realize that loving others cannot come at the expense of loving yourself. This is the shift, the turning point from unconscious caretaking to conscious healing. Healing begins with awareness, recognizing the patterns of overgiving, emotional enmeshment, and codependency is the first step. It means seeing clearly that your empathy is a gift, not a burden, and that boundaries are not walls but sacred containers protecting your energy. Saturn's influence is key here. This planet of discipline and structure teaches us that healing is not always gentle or quick. It asks for responsibility to honor your emotional limits, to say no without shame, and to cultivate self respect. Saturn reminds water signs that self care is not selfish, it's essential. Mercury, the planet of mind and communication, helps bring clarity. It encourages discerning where your energy is truly needed versus where it is being drained. It's about learning to communicate your needs and limits honestly and assertively, even when it feels uncomfortable. Fire energy, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, though often less dominant for water signs, can be summoned to fuel this transformation. Fire brings willpower, courage, and action. It helps you stand in your power, say enough, and reclaim your emotional autonomy. This shift is about moving from the role of rescuer to healer, not fixing others, but healing yourself. It's about loving without losing yourself. It's about realizing that your value is intrinsic, not conditional on how much pain you can absorb or how many wounds you can tend. When water signs embrace this shift, they become not just emotional alchemists, but radiant sources of healing light, whole, grounded, and fiercely compassionate. They learn to hold space for others without being consumed, and they discover the deepest love of all, love for themselves. Reflections and empowerment. As we come to the end of this exploration into why water signs are drawn to the broken and the wounded, it's important to remember one thing. Your empathy is a rare and beautiful gift. It allows you to see beneath the surface, to feel the hidden pain others carry, and to offer a kind of love that is profound and transformative. But that love must never come at the cost of your own well being. You are not broken for loving the broken. You are not weak for feeling deeply. And you are certainly not alone. This journey is about reclaiming your power, setting sacred boundaries, and learning to love yourself fiercely and fully without guilt or apology. It's about shifting from a place of survival to a place of thriving, from codependency to autonomy, from martyrdom to joy. I invite you to take a moment and reflect. Who are you when you're not trying to fix anyone? What parts of yourself have you been neglecting in the name of love? And what might your relationships look like when you show up as your whole healed self?